Hello, everybody. It's actually a pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me, first of all. I feel very honored to be on this stage among so many important and especially nice people. My name is Angela Morelli. I am an information designer, and I am Italian, so if you can't understand a word of what I'm saying, just raise your hand, or we can talk after the talk or during the break. In the next 20 minutes, I would like to share with you my experience of working together with scientists, and the idea that a constant daily collaboration with both scientists and audience can lead to successful results in science communication. I have a background in engineering, and while I was studying engineering, I was dealing with information presented in a very analytical way, sometimes easy to read, sometimes less, sometimes beautiful, sometimes less beautiful, sometimes easy to understand, sometimes very hard to decipher. And I can recall the sense of frustration for not understanding. And that's when I became more and more interested in information that is well presented, well organized, well explained, and beautiful. This is why, after my degree in engineering, I decided to study design. And this journey has been a long, interesting transition from engineering through industrial design and eventually to information design at Central St. Martin's in London. Now, at the end of my first year MA in information design, I read these words by Ismail Sirajuddin. If the wars of this century were fought over oil, the wars of the next century will be fought over water, unless we change our approach to managing this precious and vital resource. And these words literally dragged me into the unknown and invisible reality of the water crisis. At that time, I was about to choose the subject for my MA thesis, on which I would spend 12 months, and I felt the need to rush headlong into the subject of the water crisis. I wanted to understand the reasons behind this bold statement from the World Bank. So I focused my attention on the United Nations World Water Development Report, which was the most official report in relation to the water crisis. And it has been incredibly difficult to go through the 500 pages report, very dense, so very detailed information about the state of freshwater resources, the challenges of governance, the ecosystem. And the title, A Shared Responsibility, sounded an illusion very soon, because it was clear that the report was addressed to the few on the inside of the water sector. But I thought, if the reasons for the water crisis lie in everyone's life, shared responsibility and general awareness will never be possible as long as the information is not accessible to a non-technical audience. And I've learned that information design can play a unique role in that direction in order to democratize knowledge, in order to explain complexity and facilitate understanding. For years, I had been bombarded with the myth of solving the water crisis by not letting water run too long while having a shower. But on page 392 of this big report, I discovered that having a shower is only a small part of the story. Water scientists tell us that the real problem lies in what we eat, in how we produce what we eat, in how we trade what we eat, in how we waste what we eat. According to the Water Footprint Network, the water we use for drinking and cooking and having a shower, called domestic consumption, accounts on global average to 137 liters of water every day for me and each one of us. There is a little problem though, because what we consume at home is visible to us, but it's only a small bit of what we use in total. There are two invisible parts. The first invisible part is the water we use for the production of the industrial products we consume every day, such as paper, cotton, clothes. And this part amounts to 167 liters per day. But the big elephant in the room is the second invisible part, which is the water associated with the production of the food we consume. And this amounts to 3,496 liters per day, which means that 92% of the water we use is invisible and it is hidden in our food. So saving water at home is really important, but we have to start thinking about what we eat, how we produce what we eat, and most importantly, we need to support farmers. 92% of the water we use for food production is managed by the world's farmers, and they can use water productively and be good water stewards. So the MA project resulted in the design of a 900 pages encyclopedia of the water footprint, in cartograms, in maps, both static and interactive. And after that project, I kept exploring how we can communicate the same findings by using different narratives. I have experienced the power of digital storytelling, as well as the power of using diagrams to support our stories in front of an audience. My water journey sparked an inspiring collaboration with a water scientist. This is Professor Tony Allen, the inventor of the virtual water. And the first thing that I've learned is that without a constant dialogue with the scientist, communicating science is a risky thing. We can easily focus on myths rather than truths. We can easily communicate messages that can confuse and mislead. And when I started my dialogue with the water scientist, I discovered that my degree in engineering was not that useless, because I covertly introduced myself as an engineer just to reassure them that I would be able to understand the content. Of course, you don't need a degree in engineering in order to build that dialogue, but I've learned that you have to be prepared to listen, to understand their mindset, and work hard to master the content. That's the hard part. And the second thing that I've learned is the importance of building a real dialogue with the audience. Now, the collaborative approach is in fact one of the core aspects of information design. You will find hundreds of definitions of what information design is. One of my favorites is by interactive designer Nathan Shedroff. He says that information design addresses the organization and presentation of data, its transformation into valuable, meaningful information. And this transformation is actually a complex process, and this process has been explored and visualized by several authors in the past. The visualization goes under the name of the DIKW diagram, Data, Information, Knowledge, Wisdom. The diagram is a popular topic in the field of information design and data visualization, and I would like to share with you a revised version. I use that diagram very often when I try to describe the stages of designing and visualizing information and try to remind myself what is really important. The end point of the process is our audience. When I use the word audience, I don't mean simply lay people. I also refer to experts, governments, policymakers, anybody that should understand scientific findings, either because they need to make decisions with that information or because they need to allocate funds to our research. On the other extreme, we have the data. Data is the product of creation and research and gathering and discovering. It is the raw material we use to build our communications. Data is not a complete message. It does not have informational value. When information is organized, when data are organized, they turn into information. So information is data structured and organized in a specific way. We can explore different ways of organizing our data, and we will discover that each way can communicate a different message or highlight a different pattern. And presenting our information can lead to knowledge, and knowledge is acquired by building compelling experiences so that the patterns and meanings in the information can be learned by others. And wisdom is the ultimate level of understanding. It is the result of reflection and introspection. Now, the presentation stage is when the information can be potentially transferred successfully. That's the moment when information can become knowledge in the head of our audience. There are some channels that we can use to facilitate the transition. Perception and cognition are two important channels. The way our audience will process the information and the way human brains spot visual patterns, the way our audience read, perceive size and colors. These are all aspects that affect understanding. And we should never forget the power of beauty and joy. Beauty can make experiences memorable. Sense of wonder can really support understanding. And if perception and cognition are important, content and meaning are even more important. Professor Dan Kahn of Yale shares really interesting findings. He runs a project that is called Cultural Cognition, with the aim of studying how cultural values shape public risk perceptions. And he suggested two-channel communication, the channel of content and the channel of meaning. The channel of content is important because we need to organize and convey the information in a way that is understandable for our audience. But the channel of meaning is even more important because as human beings, we will always assess the information we receive unconsciously. We'll be assessing how this information is going to affect our life and the links to the social groups we belong to. So a lot depends on the interpretation and meaning that we give to the information and how well the information we receive fits in our network of ideas and beliefs. Science is mediated by the human brain. It is not the message that goes into the brain, but the interpretation of that message, how it is encoded. If the interpretation threatens our audience and their values, they will refuse to accept the information, even if there is scientific evidence behind it. We should go from an information deficit approach to a cultural cognition approach. For many years, I thought that public skepticism or hostility are a consequence of lack of understanding. According to the information deficit approach in science communication, once you explain science properly and beautifully, people will understand it. They will support what we are doing, they will change behavior if necessary, and everything is going to be fine. But there are some examples where this model has not been very successful at all. If we think about anthropogenic global warming, GMO issues, HPV vaccines, even political support for research, the cultural cognition approach adds a new layer to the picture. If we want to facilitate this shift from an information deficit approach to a cultural cognition approach, nothing is more important than knowing our audience, respecting them, and embracing them in the design process, diving in first person in their context and their life for real and from the very beginning. This transition happens when the process is collaborative and based on iterations. When I use the word iterations, I mean cycles of research, prototyping, testing, feedback, and revision. Challenge and target audience are the starting points, but learning how our audience will decode the information, diving into the context, building a real dialogue with them, that's the crucial part. When I moved to Norway in 2011, I was lucky as I had the opportunity to start collaborating with an extraordinary group of scientists at the Norwegian Knowledge Center for Health Services. And with them, I'm currently working on a scientific project on science communication. The project is called Informed Healthcare Choices. It is a 5-year project started in 2013 and funded by the Norwegian Research Council. The research team includes researchers from Norway, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, as well as an advisory board and a network of teachers and journalists in Uganda. The aim of the project is to enable people in low-income countries to make informed healthcare choices by improving their ability to assess claims about treatments. Why do we want to do that? Because every day, both in mass media and personal communication, we face claims about the effect of treatments. But many of these claims are biased or inaccurate. Because of this, people may suffer or waste resources. The project focuses on two strategies: teaching 10 to 12-year-old kids how to assess claims about the effect of treatments, and educating the public through radio programs that help listeners to assess claims about treatments. The collaboration with the target audience has been and will be a constant aspect through the 3 stages of prioritization of concepts, design and user testing, and evaluation. As a first step, we developed a list of 30 concepts divided into 6 groups. For example, recognizing the need for fair comparisons of treatments, or understanding the role of chance. Just to mention some of them, you will find more information at the poster number 28 today. The concept list has been the starting point for developing and evaluating the resources to improve people's ability to assess claims, and the concepts are universally relevant. Now, we are currently in the second stage, as we are developing the resources to teach and communicate these concepts through school resources in Norway and Uganda and Kenya and Rwanda, and through media resources. We will evaluate the effects of the teaching resources and the effects of a series of radio programs through randomized trials in Uganda. Let's focus on the school resources. How can school children in Uganda aged 10 to 12-year-old can learn how to assess claims about the effect of treatments? I got involved in the design of the school resources, and the process is a good example of how an iterative process looks like, and how you move through research, prototype, user test, feedback, revision, prototype, user test, feedback, revision, and so on. We had a first round of workshops with the network of teachers in Kampala and with kids in 2 different schools. This allowed us to learn a lot about the context and about the target audience, about their values and their interests, their concerns. We gathered hundreds of insights and ideas. The process has been recorded and documented very thoroughly. We were swimming in an ocean of yellow post-it notes. I had nightmares for a month. The ideas have been transferred into a huge spreadsheet. We worked on the spreadsheet for several months, staring at it, arranging, clustering, doing, undoing, discussing, spotting patterns, always in the dialogue with the network in Uganda. The first output was the idea of creating a series of games and activities to teach the kids about the concepts. These activities would be facilitated by the teachers in class and would be organized in different levels of difficulty. We designed this activity, and they have been tested with teachers and kids. We understood that the real challenge would be designing the support material to allow the teachers to teach the kids, because these concepts are largely unfamiliar to the teachers as well. And this insight turned into a new plan for our school resources, so we would also develop the teacher's guide to support the teachers while teaching the concepts and facilitating the activities. We would have a comic book for the kids to learn the concepts. We would have a book for the activities, so the students are not so dependent on the teachers to learn the material. In Kampala, we tested the new resources, and we collected, again, all the feedback through piloting in 2 different classrooms. And I have learned a lot, as in this process I learned a lot from the scientists and from the researchers, but I think that everybody had loads of fun. We also collected feedback through one-to-one interviews with teachers and kids.
Story? I have not learned about those comparisons. It's my first time to hear about it. Because for me at home, There's nobody to teach me because my father does not English. Nobody is there to teach me about healthy. But I got healthy at school only. And I go back home, I told them about what I've learned at school. Also, they start promoting it to me and giving me everything that I learned from school. And also, this helps me to know more. In science, like science, they can ask us many things about healthy. So this project helped me to improve. It's going to help me to improve on my marks on science.
And again, we collected and analyzed the feedback. And one of the things that we realized, for instance, is that the book activities would be too expensive to produce. So we dropped the book activity. We are designing new, simpler activities and exercises for the kids, plus improving the comic book and the teacher's guide. And we will keep iterating until summer. And after this stage, we will enter the evaluation process. Now, the loop of prototyping and testing and discussing and feedback and implementing changes is a very scary process. Anytime a pilot is conducted, I wait for the results with a good sense, a good dose of heart beating. And at the same time, it is the most rewarding and fulfilling experience, understanding beauty, cultural values, history, engagement, efficiency. Everything counts in the brain of our audience, in their heart and soul. But we need to learn how to listen carefully. We need to become one of them. And Patricia Moore is one expert in that. She's an industrial designer, gerontologist, and author. She has been recognized as one of the 40 most socially conscious designers in the world. In 1979, at the age of 26, Moore began an exceptional experiment to study the lifestyle of elders in North America. She traveled throughout the United States and Canada, prosthetically disguised as elder woman, more than 80 years of age. The guises Patricia Moore used represented a range of health and wealth, allowing her to experience how elders manage their daily lives. And the research was completed in 1982 after visiting 116 countries, 116 cities in 14 different states and 2 Canadian provinces. She wrote a beautiful book, Disguised, and every page is a masterpiece. On page 68, you read, "The latex we used for the artificial skin which I wore contains a trace of ammonia. My morning after condition was uncomfortable. The constant problems with my skin, capped by the frightening discovery of facial cysts, were concerns for me as I explored the world of old Patricia Moore. But not even the threat of skin cancer could dim my enthusiasm for what I was doing. I looked at it rather philosophically, as a trade-off. No pain, no gain, as the saying goes. I had voluntarily turned my face into a toxic dump with all those chemicals. I should have expected problems, and I got them. The payoffs, on the other end, were unacceptably meaningful. I began this whole experiment with the hope that I would be better able to serve the elderly community. I was seeking to learn better how to help them, and instead, in many small interactions with older people, I could see that it was they who were helping me." Thank you very much.